Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Other Side Chronicles. I'm your host, Stephen Sherrick, and I live right here in the heart of the weird and wonderful little settlement known as Burien, Washington. But I was born and raised in the shadows of the Ozark Mountains of Missouri and Arkansas, where the hills hold secrets and the nights are filled with whispers. Pull up your rocking chair and pour yourself a strong cup of whatever brew might comfort you. Then lean in close, because these stories we're telling don't wait for the light of day. Welcome to the Other Side Chronicles. And so it begins, y'all. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Other Side Chronicles. It's Stephen here. Welcome to all my kinfolk and folks here in the neighborhood. We have a special show today, and we're going to talk about one of your favorite subjects that you've been asking for. I got my good friend Gevin Booth here in the booth.
Nice to be here in the booth.
In the booth with Booth.
That's right.
Is there any no relation to Booth? Is there that?
My name's Gevin John Booth, and I've been told that John Wilkes Booth may be a distant relative.
Okay.
But
All right.
you
never know.
We don't need to claim that
I won't.
unless
Well,
I have money due to me.
We won't go into that. We won't
Thank
go
you.
into
Thank you. That's a different show.
I'll let that lie. So Gevin is how I found Gevin was here at the Highline Heritage Museum. There's a show going on right now that literally ends today.
Yeah.
And he has his extensive Bigfoot SASQUATCH collection of memorabilia that he's collected over the years, including actual footprints.
That's right.
So that's how I found out about Gevin, and then we connected, and I said, "Hey, let's do a show together," and so here we are.
That's right. I like it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So just a little bit of a background on Gevin. He's an award-winning filmmaker, artist, writer, musician, and craftsman. And lives in one of our unique little communities of Top Hat.
That's right.
Just on the east side of White Center.
That's right. Just on the edge of Burien.
How did Top Hat get its name? Do you know?
Well, it's funny because when I moved there was a big restaurant there that was a huge Top Hat that has since been torn down. So I assume it was just sort of they made it up to represent the area.
There you go.
It's no longer there.
It's hoping for a better story than
I know it's not a good one.
What are you gonna do? So let's just jump in because I know we've got 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We could talk for days.
Yeah.
Let's tell me how you got hooked into this. Tell me the story.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and there was a movie theater there, but if we wanted to see like new releases and everything, we'd go to Des Moines or Kansas City. So when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 9 years old, maybe 10, I guess I was 8 because it was. Anyway, I don't want to give away my age, but anyway,
I think you just did.
I think I just did. I went to the theater and there was a show called The Mysterious Monsters. And I remember going into it not really knowing what to expect. It just happened to be the thing that was showing at that theater. And that was the first time that I saw the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage from October 20th, 1967. And it's basically, if you're not familiar, it's the most famous video footage of a purported Sasquatch Bigfoot taken down in Bluff Creek, California, by two gentlemen named Roger Patterson, who actually did the filming, and his partner, Bob Gimlin. They were from Yakima, Washington.
Okay.
And
what part of California are we talking about?
This is kind of northwestern Washington.
Or California.
Or I'm sorry, California,
Yeah.
Probably about an hour east of Eureka, about east and south.
Okay.
So there is, and I've been there multiple times, there is thick woods there. You're off. There are some side roads and everything, but it is really desolate. And when I was, desolate's the wrong word. It's thick brush, and you just feel like, oh yeah, something could be living here. But when I saw that film for the first time, this was, of course, before Bigfoot was really even in people's consciousness. I mean, this was approximately 10 years after it was filmed, but it hadn't really taken off. So when I saw that at that young age, I was seeing a hairy monster that lived in our woods. I believed it. I was amazed because I didn't expect it, and that I just know that that's when it was just put in my subconscious.
Mm.
And from then on out, it was just like any article I would see, I'd cut it out of the paper. If I saw books at bookstores, I started collecting them. Um, as I got older, I started making my own art. I've got some sculptures downstairs that I've done, and I make my own um, I make my own Bigfoot feet that I design and everything. And so my interest, I know, was just catapulted by that footage, which is controversial, but still has not been proven to be a hoax. And that got me on my, or at least my interest in the subject. And of course, as I got older, I had a little more discerning approach to
Can
it.
I ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
What do your parents think about this?
I think they might think I'm a little nuts, but everything I do is a little nuts. And I think
I,
they've
I know
accepted that I've just
Yeah.
kind of gone my own route. I think to be honest, I believe that my dad, who recently passed away, there was a part of him that I think was proud that I approach it with a skeptical bent.
Mhm.
I don't call myself a Bigfoot believer. While I think it could be a real creature, I like to think that I'm a Bigfoot enthusiast, hobbyist, because I think it is intriguing to me whether it's a real creature or not, because it's a part of our culture now so large. When I was in Iowa, the Pacific Northwest was always this mysterious place,
Mhm.
partly because of Bigfoot. And I wanted to move out here. And here I am. Here I am.
So that literally is what brought you out here?
It's not what brought me out
Right.
here, but it was always this mysterious
Mhm.
place. Kind of before I even knew where Seattle was, it was like Pacific Northwest. And then British Columbia, it seems like the early knowledge I had of Bigfoot was British Columbia. And the reason I say that is recently my mom unearthed some drawings I'd done as like a 9-year-old. And I drew Bigfoot in the hills of British Columbia. And if you attacked him, he would attack you back. But if you left him be, he was a peaceful creature. So it was already in my subconscious when I was young. I was drawing pictures, making books.
So I'm going to go back to I'm going to go back to what you said, that you're a believer. You're not a believer. Say that again.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a Bigfoot believer. I'm a Bigfoot enthusiast.
What do you mean? What does that mean exactly?
It means that I've been captivated by the possibility of this creature. And not only that, I'm captivated by the way it has permeated our culture. And I'm also captivated by the fact that we need mysteries, keep us human. The idea that we know everything is a fallacy. And so there's almost a need to have these creatures that are out there. It would be very, um, I would be very excited if they found a Bigfoot body,
Mhm.
because when I look at it, I don't necessarily buy into what they call the woo factor, which is that it goes through portals or it's coming from an UFO. Hey,
Right.
anything's
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I like to imagine that if it's a real creature, it is a hominid that has lasted for thousands of years, that there's probably not very many left. They do hide in secret spots, so it would be hard to find. But I also understand that myth is important in our life in general. And when you see all these stories from Native American cultures all over the world, there are different quote unquote Bigfoots in almost every country. They have different
I'm a
names.
huge Joseph Campbell fan.
Yes,
Yeah. So there you go. All right.
and that
Yeah.
is also, my dad was a
Yeah.
theologian, and
Yeah.
just thinking about ideas of who are we, and what is this world that we live in. Um, they didn't discover gorillas till 1902. But there were all sorts of rumors in these areas of these large, hairy, man-like creatures. And of course, at the same time, people said, no, that can't be true. And all of a sudden, oh, here's a body, here's a photo. Same thing with the panda. It wasn't till the late 1800s that,
Platypus.
yeah,
Yeah.
or the coelacanth,
Right. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
fish they thought was millions of years old that they found. So the possibility that this is real is so intriguing to me. But I think the reason I call myself a hobbyist and enthusiast instead of a believer is I have not seen a body. The only I've seen a lot of fake Bigfoot videos. I've seen a few that are tantalizing. They could be real, but I think we are flooded with a bunch of hoax and fake evidence. So you try to find evidence that would support that it's a real creature. And what's most intriguing to me about that is that there have been a number of footprints found. There have been un there have been hairs found that are related to potential primates that can't be matched with anything in the national databases. That's intriguing to me, but there's been no necessarily definitive DNA samples yet. Some people claim there have. That's a controversial thing.
Right.
There's also, to this day, there are eyewitness accounts. I think the Bigfoot Research Center, BFRO, says there's been maybe 3,500 since 1990. That doesn't include experiences where people have not shared their stories. These are just the ones that are logged. So once again, this is a real experience that people are having.
All right.
Whether it's a real creature or not, that's what I'm
Sure.
trying to find out.
You know, and I this doesn't this is just this goes beyond Bigfoot for me, and obviously I do this show, which there's a lot of things that I just think are super interesting that I'm open to believing in. But I think going back to kind of what you were saying, I think we've kind of lost that connection to nature, and it's to me it's like I always think of the word enchantment, like this is in it kind of gives me that kind of welling of like the possibility
Right.
of things
The
like this, which helps
possibility.
me stay more connected to instead of this we're just the so electronic world that we're into right now. That we just when I'm out there in the woods, just the possibility
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
mountain lion's watching over me, or that
Right.
Bigfoot might be doing the
Right.
same doing
I
the same thing.
Well, and also just to think, the for me, the normal is not as exciting as the nuance and the weird and what is outside of our norms, which is another reason I think I'm into this. I told you before the show, I've witnessed a few UFOs. I approached that subject with the same degree of skepticism in the sense that I would never claim I saw extraterrestrial crafts. But if I explain to you what I saw, it sure sounds like that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold. Um, I did have, I have never seen a Bigfoot. I've met people that have had witness experiences, and that's where it kind of changes for them. That's when it's like, oh, I'm a believer because I actually saw this creature. And there are some very compelling testimony. My closest experience to having a Bigfoot experience is I went down to the Bluff Creek area where this famous film was made.
Wow.
And it has just been kind of a dream since I was 9. I was going on a road trip with a good friend. We went down, we go down 101 every year, and I was like, Bluff Creek's not that far from where we're going. Let's just stop in.
Yeah.
And Bluff Creek is about 45 minutes outside a town called Willow Creek. And Willow Creek kind of became famous as the Bigfoot hotspot. There is a big flats Bigfoot museum there. There are carvings. There's like the Bigfoot Hotel. You can get a Bigfoot burger, and there's a Bigfoot books and all that stuff. So I was like, I at least want to check that out. And I remember we showed up in town. We went to the bar because we didn't really know where we were going. And we asked the bartender, do you know how to get to Bluff Creek? And it was like a television show. 3 guys sitting at the bar turned around. They had these big beards like mine. And the first guy said, "You looking for Bigfoot?" And we were just like, "Okay, we're on the right." And so they gave us directions. They were like, "You can't actually get to the site unless you hike down,
Yeah.
but here's a way you can get close to it." So we started driving and we pulled off. You're on a reservation. Um, Gosh, I can't remember the tribe, but there is a reservation that you're on where this took place. And so we even stopped to get gas, and my friend told the person behind the counter that, "Oh, we're looking for Bigfoot." And I was kind of embarrassed because I was like, "Oh, we don't need to tell people that." And she was like, "Oh, she's out there. I don't know if she'll come out today." So it's just, it's a part of the culture there. So we pulled to this spot. There was a gate closed. There were absolutely no people or other cars there. And we just hiked up this mountain, and it was like an old dirt road. And like I said, it was blocked off. So there was no traffic or anything. We were climbing up there. Below us was the side of a mountain with just thick trees. Same thing above us. There was just thick trees. I told my friend to humor me. I said, "Let's just look to see if there's any prints. Have your camera ready." And so we're just walking, don't see any prints. And at some point, though, I heard some like rocks. There was like a siding of like clay, and these rocks fell down. And I was just like, and I turned to my friend, I looked up, didn't see anything. I got my camera ready just in case. And all of a sudden, in the woods below us, and we both heard this. In fact, when we got home, I told my friend Dan, I said, "You write down your experience, I'll write mine, and then we'll compare notes."
Right.
But what we heard was a large, what sounded like a bipedal creature walking through the woods. It was just,
So for you folks that
yes,
I'm not sure what bipedal means, walking on two legs.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
walking on two legs.
And this is where, once again, I will admit that my skeptical brain comes into it. Literally sounded like a human or a Bigfoot walking. It was one step at a time. It did about six steps, stopped. My heart's racing. I'm taking pictures in the woods. Didn't see anything, but heard this. And I told my buddy, "Get your camera ready. Just be quiet. We'll just hang here." We waited maybe 10 more minutes or more. And all of a sudden we heard it move again. And it was just like 8 steps quickly. And we were just like, "Oh my God, now." And then we waited for another 15 minutes, didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. I took random photos in case you could see something in the background. And then we said, "Wait a second, let's go down below across the way so we can look up to the mountain where this creature was, because maybe we could actually see it moving in the trees." So we went down there, didn't see anything. So what I'm telling you is there was a creature there walking. What I don't know is if it was a bear, a cougar. Even though they walk on four legs, when they're walking, it could sound like a bipedal. This thing sounded huge. I mean, it really was. It was just breaking branches and everything. But I would never claim like it was a Bigfoot. But that was very exciting.
Did you look for tracks or anything? Did you?
We didn't, because it was so thick and it was very steep and it was down far enough. I mean, I would have if it was accessible, because that's what you want. You want the other evidence, or even to see like broken branches. So it's like, that's not a story that would convince anyone, but the fact that I was literally there
convinced me
to try to see if it was a big, like,
I'm in, brother. Right.
And just really quickly, another experience with the same friend. He knows about my interest.
Sure.
We stopped at a place called Nat Creek. It's maybe an hour and a half from here, and it's isolated, but there's actually a trail for hikers. So it's not like there aren't people there. There are people there. And when we were there were no people there.
Can I just ask what area this is in? Like what kind
This is Washington, and I wish I knew exactly where. I'm kind of seeing it. Like I pulled up the pictures.
Yeah.
Like, where is this? Oh, Nat Creek. So you could find it on but I can't.
Yeah, okay.
Can't really remember.
Yeah.
But Washington, and so we're just walking on the path. Like I said, it's open to the public. There were no other people there, and we came up to this spot where there were 4 large footprints in the mud. I didn't even see them, which is I'm embarrassed to say. But my friend was like, "Oh, you just walked over some Bigfoot prints." And so I just sort of humored him and I looked at them, and one of the feet, I immediately saw that it looked like it was a human boot.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think they were Bigfoot prints by any means. But I stepped back and I took a couple pictures. I didn't even look at them until I got home. But when I got home, I looked at the one picture that had the four prints in it, and the top right print had a very distinctive heel. It was maybe 14 inches long, and you could see the toes very clearly. So the two options are that there's three options. One is that it's someone stepped in their boot and then, for a joke, added toes, that it's just a hoax. The other is that it's an actual Bigfoot print. I guess the third option would be that it just looks like toes, that it's just that's how the ground looks.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that sort of experience where I'm looking at this going like, this looks like a Bigfoot print, that's, I think, when people that are field investigators get really excited because these prints are still found to this day.
Right.
And I don't discount the fact that there's a lot of hoaxers out there. I think that's the hardest thing when you study this. But these legitimate, I call them legitimate only because there are certain prints that you can see the toes splayed, so it's not just like a wooden print that would look the same every time and just be flat.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the movement of one of the things that researchers believe about the Bigfoot is that different from human feet, that the Bigfoot has a mid-tarsal break. And what that means is that in the middle of the foot, the bones actually move, which humans don't have. We move on the ball of our foot. And so sometimes when you see prints, it hits with its heel, then goes forward. So there's kind of an arch underneath. You can see where that mid-tarsal break is. So people who have been studying the footprints, when they see that sort of a print, it reads more real to them. Plus, there are certain prints that have what they believe to be dermal ridges, which every foot has.
Okay.
There is a former FBI investigator. I'm going to get his name wrong. Chilcutt, I believe. And once again, he was brought in to look at this stuff by Bigfoot researchers. We think we found fingerprints, dermal ridges. Well, he didn't believe in it at all. Once he studied these prints, he's now a believer.
Mm.
And that's what's intriguing to me. The people that don't really have an interest in Bigfoot, but have some expertise, they kind of go in going like, no, this can't be real. And once they look at the evidence, their minds change.
Got it.
And there's not a lot of people that, like, for instance, one of the most well-known is Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State University. And he is an anthropologist. He studies anatomy of primates. Same thing, he had an interest in this almost like me since he was young. He saw the Patterson-Gimlin. What an interesting concept, but he didn't believe necessarily it was a real creature until he started amassing the evidence. I think he has either the first or second largest collection of purported Bigfoot cast prints. So he's been able to see the vast majority of this evidence and compare it. Sometimes he sees a print that looks like another print in the same area years later, and so he is a scientist that looks at this, believes it's real. He also, for Jeff, he had an experience where he was, I don't know if you're familiar with Grover Krantz. Grover Krantz worked for Washington State University, and he was one of the first anthropologists that really believed in Bigfoot. He's written books. He was a Washington guy. I think he did not get tenure because he, I mean, he was saying something that especially, this was back in the 70s. He's deceased now, but so anyway, Jeff Meldrum was visiting him at Washington State University to talk about his interest in Bigfoots. And on the way home, he decided that he was going to surprise visit Paul Freeman. And Paul Freeman is someone that lives in Eastern Washington. There is famous footage that Paul claims he got of a Bigfoot, and it's pretty popular. It's online. It's called the Freeman footage. And you do see what he claims is a Bigfoot walking from right to left. He has been studying Bigfoot for years. He has a lot of prints. A lot of people thinks he was a hoaxer because he found so many, but in the same regard, the logic could go, well, he found so much evidence because he knew where they were and he was researching for them. Anyway, Jeff Meldrum decided to surprise visit him just to see his cast prints and everything. And when he showed up, Paul Freeman said, "Oh, I just found some prints yesterday. Do you want to go see him?" Once again, Jeff didn't plan to see him. This was a surprise visit. He took Jeff up there and he saw a series of prints. Some were just half, some you could just see the toes kind of splayed, and that convinced him at that moment. He's like, "Oh, this might be a real thing." And that kind of got him started. Now, I'm a skeptic, I told you. So it's interesting. It seems like every book I read, I've read a lot of the Bigfoot books. It seems like every book I read, I get one new piece of information. And I read, I can't even remember the book, but it was recent. And they said, well, maybe Grover Krantz called Paul and said, Jeff's going to come visit. And then he went out and faked prints. So, even that story from Jeff might not mean that they're real, but just when someone who is an expert in how primate or hominid feet would look, the difference with human, and they've literally studied these and said, I think this is a real creature. I just listen to that a little more.
Sure.
Than a random.
So one of the things I'll just throw at you and get your opinion on that I've heard against it is that from back when this original film that drew you in which exploded the kind of the Bigfoot phenomenon, we haven't got a lot of new evidence other than a couple films, lots of footprints, but nothing, no bones, not any. I know there's a little bit of stuff on a few hairs but that's controversial too, like no DNA evidence that is just like, but at the same time, we have this amazing influx of new technology, right?
True.
All the drones, the this, the that, the infrared, the satellite, all this stuff. But with all of that, you would think, that so.
No, I this is why I call myself a Bigfoot enthusiast, not a believer, because the argument of whether it's a real creature would end today if they brought out a body or bones or even a jaw or anything like that. And we don't have that. However, if this is a real creature, what's unique about it is that it hides from us. It's a smart creature that finds the places they wouldn't necessarily have their home by a freeway or a main road because they don't want to be found, and the other argument could be that they are such a dwindling, if there still exist. I mean, one theory would be that they existed back when that film was taken, but there aren't any left, and we just have the myth that we're relying on. The other
that
is
they've gone extinct.
That's a theory I sometimes think, well, that's possible. I think there's a lot of misidentification. I think, you see a dark, tall shadow in the woods, you can ascribe it to be Bigfoot. It might be a tree or a bear rubbing its back or whatever. I think that happens a lot too. But once again, when it comes to the fact that we have all this new equipment, we still don't have Bigfoot. There are some theories. For instance, with the infrared cameras, there are theories that Bigfoot can sense the infrared beams. It's like, once again, is this just an explanation on why we don't have it?
I feel like you're drawing me into the portal again.
Well, that's the problem, is that I have the same issues with all of that, because it's sort of like, okay, now everyone, Like I could see if you had if you witnessed a Bigfoot 20 years ago, you might not have a camera with you. Now everyone with a phone has a camera.
Hmm.
So there should be more photos, okay? Or the fact that, as you said, drones are now very affordable. Infrared cameras are affordable. Now, granted, the more you spend on an infrared camera, the better information you can get. So some of these cheap ones you might not, but the fact that we don't have a definitive heat image from a drone makes me go, that doesn't seem right. I mean, that's where I come down to is there's so much evidence, and yet at the end of the day, the definitive proof doesn't seem to exist yet.
Mm.
And I think that's why so many people hold on to the Patterson-Gimlin film because it's never truly been debunked. There have been more than one person who's claimed to be in the suit. There has never been a suit found. They have major contradictions in their stories. Both Patterson and Gimlin have always claimed it was real. Gimlin is still alive. I talked to Gimlin.
Wow.
He seems to be the most down-to-earth, honest guy you'll ever meet. And I had I had one question, and I'm trying to think how I phrased it. I'd read so much about Patterson-Gimlin, but each time you read about this film, you might get a little different piece of information that makes the story more complete. And so I asked him, I said, is there something from that day that might not be common knowledge that would maybe support that it was real? And what he told me was, he said, well, the the footprints, here's the other thing with the Patterson-Gimlin, there were footprints from the creature as well that they cast. So you have multiple evidence there. And the between the feet, I think was about 43 inches on the ground, which is, where it was actually filmed, which is larger than a normal human gait.
I'm just going to back you from the mic a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. There you go.
Get a little hot.
That's a lot. There you go.
And what Gimlin said is that they tried to chase the creature for a little while because it kept walking. It went up on the side of the mountain. And what Bob Gimlin told me is that
he was on horseback too.
He was on horseback too.
Right.
So they got up to a point where it was sort of the top of this ridge, and it was more, I don't know if he said it was gravel, but it was more of like where you could see the scuff marks of the feet. And what he told me is at the top, the gate was like more like closer to 60 inches. Like in that film, you just see it walking away, but at the top, it started booking. And I just thought that was an interesting detail that I'd never really read about, that it's like, maybe he's lying, maybe he made it up. But I was like, that's fascinating because they chased it for a while. They saw these scuff marks where it had gone up into a very steep ridge that the horses couldn't go, they couldn't go. So what they decided to do is go back and get plaster casts of the prints. It started raining, so they took bark from the trees and they covered it up so that they could, because I don't think they had enough material to do all that day. They might have gone into Eureka. But anyway, once again, I think when I think about that, I've seen multiple interviews with Bob Gimlin. He just seems like the most honest, down-to-earth guy. And I really believe what he's telling me and us is the truth. But my skeptical side kicks in and I go, that doesn't mean that Patterson might have hoaxed him. I mean, he's to this day, and Gimlin is still alive. He's still in Yakima. I think he's 92. I mean, he's getting up there. But he still says, I believe this was a creature. I saw the muscles. Gimlin also had his gun drawn. So if Patterson was pulling a trick on him, he could have shot his friend.
Right. Well, yeah. And plus, I've also heard, I can't remember which one of them said it, that like there's sometimes they wish they had have shot it, and that way they wouldn't have got all this ridicule
Absolutely.
from over the years. They would literally have proof.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's the other thing that people don't know is for the first 15 or 20 years, both Patterson and Gimlin got so much ridicule. In fact, first of all, Gimlin made no money off of this. And his wife worked in the bank, and people would come in and just sort of torment her about this. So Gimlin wasn't like, look at me, we got a Bigfoot, I want to make money. He literally hid. And then once it became more popular, and all of a sudden the t-shirts start coming out, there's TV shows. When I was growing up, before cable, I'm an old man, right?
I'm with you.
And but it was literally like if there was a Bigfoot documentary or In Search of, it was like maybe once a year, and I would like videotape it.
Yeah.
Now you just turn on your online and there's 200, so all of a sudden it's become a part of our culture, and that made him more open to say, okay, I'm going to freely tell my story now because this is
safer.
This is what's happened to me. Um, Roger Patterson died in 72 of Hodgkinson's disease, and to his dying, he passed a lie detector test, and to his dying day, he said it was real.
Yeah.
Now, could it be a man in a monkey suit? Of course. That's like the first thing that you would think. When I was 9, I didn't have that critical thinking. I was like, that's a creature.
Yeah.
Now I go, maybe, but the way it walks, the muscles, the story of how they even got there, they were there because someone had called them a month before because they discovered 3 sets of Bigfoot tracks. And they said, come down, they're here. They came down thinking they might find some tracks. They didn't expect to get a film of him, although they did have a camera. And they had been there for approximately 2 weeks. It wasn't like the first day they arrived, here it is. But that's still considered sort of the gold standard. And so I guess I'm returning to what you said because it bothers me as well. You go like, well, if the gold standard is a 16 millimeter film from 1967, and now it's 2025 where everyone has a camera and everyone, why aren't we just deluged with this? Well, my answer to that would be maybe it's not a real creature. I can definitely say that that's a possibility. The other is that, well, people walking with their cameras are not in the deep woods off trail miles in. Like the reason that Patterson-Gimlin, for instance, got this picture is they took their horses in 20 minutes. There weren't roads there. There weren't other people there. I mean, people forget that. They weren't like in a nature preserve. They were in the middle of thick woods. So how many day-to-day people are walking around with their phones off the trail, camping, hiking in? Now, you would maybe expect that there would be like more Forest Services people that have it. Well, that's a good point. Well, some have not. They've said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen a print, never seen a Bigfoot. But once again, I go, how many, if they are a species that there are very few of them, where they live is literally smart enough to try to avoid humans. So they found these kind of spots where they congregate or however their familial system works. Well, maybe that's why you're not following them. Or maybe they're smart enough to see if you have infrared cameras on trees. Maybe they actually notice that and go, oh, I'm going to walk behind it. I mean, maybe that's giving them too much credit. But I think there are explanations, but that also makes me less convinced that they're real because of what you just said.
Right.
Same thing with the UFOs.
Right.
I have an interest there, and I go, everyone's got a phone. We should have the most compelling image of like a UFO landing on a. Well, we've got tons of videos of like lights in the skies for sure.
Yeah.
Tons, because people do have phones, but it's like a blob of light that we can't tell the shape of it or how fast it's moving. It's just a blob of light. And I never discount that it couldn't be something more fantastical. But in fact, some of the famous UFO footage that has been released from the Navy after that 2017 New York Times article, I've read compelling articles explaining that they don't function outside of what our normal things can do and that it's probably a drone. It might even be ours. But those are all theories until we actually have that craft, and that's the same
Some
thing.
say we do have the craft, but
I agree. That's the other thing.
I don't know. I've not heard we have a Bigfoot, but I have heard we have a craft.
Well, I've heard we have Bigfoots too. I mean, that's the thing. It's just intriguing for me. There is a rumor going around that when Mount St. Helens blew, it burned the whole sides of the mountains and there were dead Bigfoots that the government, took out.
Yeah.
Do I believe that? Probably not. But is it a possibility? Yes. And so I think the possibility is what's intriguing to me.
Sure.
And also thinking about, like we talk about these old Indian tribes, Native American tribes, and all over the world that have these, there's a lot of oral traditions. Some of it's written down
Mm-hmm.
where, there would be like a hairy man or the hairy monster or whatever, so many different names for it. And they would often tell their children, like, don't go in the woods by yourself
Mm-hmm.
because the hairy man's out there or whatever they called it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brain goes, well, there's two explanations. Either they're telling them that because there is a hairy man out there that
Mm-hmm.
they've seen, that they've communicated with, or they're making up a story so their kids don't go in the
Sure.
woods. And that's sort of the way I approach all this fantastical stuff. I'm so into like the paranormal and all this stuff,
To
but I don't
me,
know if it's real.
to me, either way, I
Right.
love it. I love both.
And that's why I
I
collect,
right,
I think. When
right,
you think about it,
yeah,
the reason I have
yeah.
a Bigfoot collection here is that I'm not trying to convince everyone it's a real creature necessarily, but I want you to look at all the different pieces of
Mhm.
evidence and then go, well, this is intriguing enough to consider. One other thing is in China, not that long ago, they found a jawbone from a creature they've called Gigantopithecus. And this was a creature that walked on two legs. It was literally like 10 feet tall. I mean, this was a monster. And since then, they've found, I think, another jawbone, maybe a finger bone. And so, of course, there's a lot of theories that this is a relative of that, or maybe it walked over the Bering Strait. Um, and that's what we're seeing.
Mhm.
The reason I'm raising that is not only were there large, hairy, bipedal creatures on this planet, that's what that proved,
Mhm.
but also in all the years, all we've found is like the jawbone. We haven't found a rib cage or the leg bones and everything. So when people say, why haven't we found a Bigfoot body? Well, it's a legitimate question because if
Mhm.
we had one, the argument's over. But if it's really such a small population existing in the far reaches of the forest where humans aren't, and the way we know nature works, which is literally animals scavenge on dead bodies, the bones start to disintegrate. Well, it's not a shock to me that we haven't found a body.
Yeah.
We rarely find bare bones. We do find them, they're out there, but we rarely find that type of evidence. Once again, the second you bring out those bones, it's like, oh, it's a real creature. Doesn't mean that there's a huge population or anything. Um, so there's sort of an argument on both sides for all the
Sure.
evidence.
Yeah.
But I think the more I research, the more I'm almost more skeptical because of those
Right.
reasons. But holding out the option of the possibility and to see the way that it's played its role in culture, whether it's a serious analysis of the other and what's the mysteries and why we need mysteries to feel complete, or just the fun nature of it.
Yeah.
It's in these commercials now, and people can use it as a bulwark for our hairy friend in the forest.
Mhm.
It is intriguing to me, and also just the iconography. I one of the sculptures I have down there is a unicorn with a Bigfoot riding it with an alien on its back. Like you can have fun with it too.
Sure. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just feeds the imagination. When I gave my Sasquatch talk at the Highline Heritage Museum, a young boy came up to me afterwards named Jack. And he was just so excited about this subject. And he had all this knowledge, for such a young kid. And I just got on a knee and I talked with him more than
Had
anyone.
to see yourself a little bit there.
That's what it was. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I remember how excited I was.
Yeah. Right.
And I ended up, even just this past weekend, I ended up giving him sort of a care package of a bunch of books.
Nice.
But I wrote this letter saying, use your critical thinking, know that there's a lot of hoax. It's like, but just to see how excited he was about this, I realized it's not about, oh, I want to find a monster. It's about the excitement of possibility and discovery. And the more he reads about Bigfoot, the more he learns about nature or how we do describe myths or why myths are important. Like the journey it's almost like if we found it, then where's the fun? You know, I mean, in a certain sense, there's something about it's just out of reach. It's like the same thing with the JFK assassination. They're releasing all these documents. Well, the answer's probably not in there. Or the more, now that we're taking UFOs or UAPs seriously, it doesn't mean that we have photos of these crash saucers they talk about. We have tantalizing testimony. And that's the same thing with Bigfoot. We have so much testimony. You go, but where's the actual evidence? And so, that's part of the fun though for me is that there's always a new angle or people have different, one of the things in the Olympic project, which is here in Washington, Northwest area, they recently found these big nests that, they're akin to the nests that gorillas create.
Well, I've not heard this.
Well, I mean, there's video of these. They found them. And so, first of all, I go, well, if those are Bigfoot nests, surely there's hairs in there. If they slept in them, and so apparently they found some hairs, inconclusive. There's always a lot of inconclusive stuff. But once again, you go like, how tantalizing that they found these things. And then they found others since, and they're literally interwoven. Like, well, maybe it's a hoax. Maybe some strange person went out in the middle of the forest, made these nests, hoping that someone would stumble on them. But does that make sense either? So I just think there's a chance because of what you said earlier, the fact that we now have these like drones, infrared cameras, that the chance of actually getting compelling evidence or more compelling evidence, the stakes go up. But of course, if there's not a creature, then it's always going to be a chasing game.
Sure.
And once again, that's okay for me in a certain sense.
We're out of time.
Oh, I was just getting started.
Oh, I know. It's been so fun.
Well, it has been.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Really, it has to be quick. What do you want? Like, what is it? Like, what would be like you in your last part? I mean, both of us are in that last. What would be like the perfect outcome for you in this?
The perfect outcome would be, I think, a long film of either one or more creatures that was like, with the hoaxes, they're often like a 12-second clip. I want to see an hour-long video of a family that you cannot describe that and then now we know it's real, so now we get to protect them. And now it's a different search. It's like, how can we protect them? What do they need from us? What are they offering? So
I just don't want them to end up in a zoo.
Either do I. That's why I'm saying you don't capture them. You capture them by a camera.
Yeah.
And then you say, now science admits, oh, these are real.
Yeah.
Or we have definitive DNA or bones. Just so we can say, oh, this is a real creature. Now that would excite me because I've been into it for 50 years or 45 years. That would excite me to one day find out this was real.
Yeah.
Or the other thing would be if they pulled out the costume of Patty from '67 and they said, see, it was a hoax. That would be compelling to me too.
Yeah.
Because like, I want to know if that's real.
Sure.
That's why I did the documentary on it. It's very compelling to me. I would never say it's a hoax, but that's the most logical explanation.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that I would hope for.
Yeah. Thanks, Gevin.
Thank you so much.
It was
fun.
so much fun.
That was fun.
Thanks everybody for joining the Other Side
Thank
Chronicles. Thank you, Gevin. We'll see you all next time.